This video file is recorded in Sabancı University during the recitations for the CS201 Introduction to Computing course, as it was given in the fall 2016 semester.
Explaining the code, we saw what we did, so let's go line by line. And the first line, let's explain those first two lines of the code. I'm saying to the compiler, well, you should reserve box, and this box's name is name, and it's of type string. Also, you should reserve 4 more boxes, which are of type float. One of them is called height. The other one is called weight. And the third one is called BMI. Here, is your output. I come to see out, enter my name, and then I'm reading my name. Then I'm saying, okay, name, enter your height in meters. I'm reading height, and I'm saying my name that I just entered, enter your weight in kilos. So the output will be something like this. This is what you are going to see as an output. Enter your name. Let's say that I'm giving my name. It's RightClick. So when it comes to C name and I press enter, automatically this R3 is put here. So whenever I refer to the variable name, I mean the value it has in the box, and it's RightClick. I go to this line, and I'm saying name, and the name is RightClick. Print it. Enter your height in meters. Comma. Enter your height. Blah blah blah. And I'm reading my height. Okay. Let's say I'm giving 185 as an input. When I press enter, the value that I just gave as an input is going to be stored here. So here I have 185. We go. See out. I'm printing name. What's the value of name? The value of name is RightClick. So I'm printing RightClick. Enter your weight in kilos. Enter your weight in kilos. Let's say I was 75, 80, never mind. When I press enter here, so now I came here, wait. When I write 85, 75, 80, whatever, I press enter, automatically it's stored here. So 80 is stored at the weight box. Afterwards, I'm doing some calculations. So the BMI index is calculated. Weight, this is the formula for it, divided by height squared. If some of you is going to study medicine, we'll deal with BMI. And how are we going to write this in C++? This is easily weight divided by, we have parentheses, height multiplied by height. What do you think? Now let's say we have some value, it's like 23 for instance, 0.83, it's stored here. We are not considering those lines of codes. I'm going to explain what are those about. Cout, name, height, printing this line of code now. So, height. This is printed as it is because it's in quotation marks, so it's a string. But when I print this height, I'm printing the value that I've stored in the box height. So it's 185. Then I'm printing meters, comma, weight. Meters, comma, weight. And let me show you the rest of it. So I'm printing weight, kilos, and line. Weight is printed as a string. Then when I print the weight, the variable weight, it's 80 kilos. And to a new line, I'm printing BMI as a string. So BMI, and the value of BMI, which happens to be, if I'm not mistaken, 23.7. It's 23.8. Any questions about this piece of code? How many of you did understand it? I understood it. All of you. Should I go faster? Yes or no? Who says yes? I'm not sure. Who says no? I should. Okay, I'm sorry. You lost. I should go faster. Okay. Can you tell me if I didn't put parentheses here? Would it be correct or not? Have you heard about precedence? What does that mean? Let me write you a mathematical expression, and it's not programming, by the way. So 3 multiplied by 2 plus 1 divided by 1 plus 1. No. 3 plus 0. No. 8 plus 1. Or you have seen it like this. 2 plus 1 divided 8 plus 1. So which one is going to be done first here? This is pure mathematics, high school, primary school mathematics. Am I going to do the multiplication first? The parentheses, very nice. So first I go with parentheses, with the brackets. Okay, let me do the parentheses. So this is equal to 3 multiplied by 2 plus 1 is 3, divided by 9. Now what am I going to do? Multiplication, division. Then addition, summation, and subtraction. Are you okay with this? So if I have something like this, 3 multiplied by 2 plus 1, am I going to add 2 and 1 first, or am I going to multiply 3 and 2? I'm going to multiply 3 and 2, okay? The same applies to programming. So addition and subtraction. Remember those, okay? Now I've put parentheses here because the formula of BMI is the following one. Weight divided by height squared. Can you guess what would have happened if I didn't write this part here, this term here in parentheses? Would have been correct or not? Why?
Because it will start from the left.
It starts from the left, and then, so yeah.
And then it will divide weight by height.
Weight and height are going to be divided, yes. Yeah, this term is going to be multiplied with height. So basically, no parentheses. Basically, if you do something like this without parentheses, this is what you're going to calculate. Weight. It's going from the left to the right. It's always like that, from top to bottom, for all programming languages. So weight divided by height, multiplied by height again. Those two terms are going to get cancelled, so this is weight. So the formula for BMI is equal to weight, but BMI is not equal to it. It's weight divided by height squared, okay? So if you didn't write the parentheses, that would have been what kind of an error? Logical error. And you would have wasted, like as a beginner, like a couple of hours. Why it's not working? You'll do the math on letters, but it's not working on the PC. That's why, remember, this is called precedence, okay? Which one goes first? Which one has high priority? Always start with parentheses. Multiplication and division are basically the same. Which one is first is going to be executed. Then we have addition and subtraction, okay? Just as it's the case in real life, in maths. Okay. If you don't want to get confused, probably it's better if we do something like this. So instead of height squared, we can define a new variable, which is float. I can put another name to it. Let's say it's height squared, and it will be equal to height multiplied by height. And instead of weight divided by 8 multiplied with taking parentheses, I can write this piece of code, height squared. The result is the same. Okay? As beginners, I would encourage you to use this technique. Okay? Because probably you're going to make mistakes more often. But afterwards, after you're going to get used, you can put like 10 comments in one comment. Okay? But maybe it will be like months from now. Now, you might wonder, what are those green lines? Those are called comments. Have you heard about comments? Yeah. So, can you tell me what are they about?
There's comments that the writers are not compiled.
Exactly. So basically, it's a good programming style to write comments. They explain you what the code is doing, because the code might get very complicated, and you explain it just in plain English or Turkish, what the code is working, what's the logic behind the code, and how it's doing the stuff that it's doing, okay? It's a kind of a message, because sometimes you're going to write, not you, if you work in a corporation, there will be a team with more programmers, maybe 100 programmers working in the same project, and you want to communicate with each other, you can do it, let's say, with codes. So another one, if he sees your code, you will see he sees what basically you have written, okay? So this is what Professor Buchan wrote to us, that we should try creating variable called height squared and put JSS with it, okay? It's a good programming practice to write comments. The compiler ignores them. It is as if they are not written at all, okay? It's just for the user to see them and understand what's going on in the code. Even if you write a piece of code yourself right now, maybe 1 year from now, you will have difficulties understanding it unless you write comments. So, as a lazy guy, usually I skip this part, I don't write the comments, but you should do it, okay? And I do it when I think that I'm going to use the piece of code after a while, and I might forget what kind of tricks of styles I've used in that piece of code, okay? I encourage you to use comments, because for your assignments, especially the first 2 or 3 assignments, we will check this whether you are using comments or not, okay? Because we want to make you get used with writing comments. there are two ways of writing comments. // everything that is up until the end of the line is a comment. It's discarded from the compiler. Okay, this is another line of comment, but everything that is in this line. If I go to another line and I don't use slashes, this is a mistake. Okay, we have those red lines. Okay, if I put those lines, then this is a comment, and I can say, I can write this is just to show you how comments work. The compiler doesn't take it into consideration. This is one way of writing comments. The other one is this one. You start with a slash, then you have a star. Up until // everything in between is a comment. Okay? So this piece of code from here up to the top is a comment. You start with a slash, you put a star, you write everything you want, then / again, this is a comment. Basically, this comment here is explaining what BMI is, how it's calculated, and so on. Okay? Any questions about this piece of code? You understood it, I suppose. If yes, let's go with another example. And I like this example, since it is about physics. Let's go with vehicles. Okay. Remove this code, this CPP file. Don't delete it, just remove it. If you press delete, it will be deleted. You won't have it in your folder, on your folder. But if you remove it, you will have it. So add, RightClick-Add-Existing Item. And there is this CPP file called vehicles.cpp. Open it. Double click it. Well, let's see what is this. What is this guy doing? Can you figure out what it's doing? The best way to do this is by reading the comments. That's why we are writing comments. Let me write this 130. So this program calculates total travel time and meeting point location in a setting of two vehicles moving towards each other. Location names, the distance, and the velocities of the two vehicles are the inputs of the program. So this is what the program is doing. That's why we use comments. Let's write C in ignore and C in get. Let's run the program and see what it is doing. Can I erase this stuff? Probably you need to move this. Precedence, priorities. Okay. So, I should enter the name of the locations. Let's say they are Ankara and Istanbul. The distance between two, I don't know. Let's guess that it's 500, no, not 200, 500 kilometers. The first vehicle is traveling with 55 kilometers per hour. And the second one is traveling 45 kilometers per hour. They will meet in 5 hours. The meeting point will be 275 kilometers away from Ankara, and the meeting point will be 225 kilometers away from Istanbul. Okay, this is what the program is doing. Let's see how it's done. But first, I want to know, is there any fan of physics here? Only you. So there's a half fan of physics. You. So half and half. It's only one fan out of 20 students. It's still not bad. Usually it's like this the case nowadays. So this is Ankara and this is Istanbul. The distance between them is 500 kilometers. There's a car. Yeah, I know that I'm not a good driver. Going from Ankara to Istanbul, with a velocity of 45 kilometers per hour. There's another car. This is not a UFO, it's a car. And it's going from Istanbul to Ankara with the speed of 55 kilometers per hour. You know the formula that you have probably seen in your primary school. The speed is calculated as the distance traveled in a certain amount of time. Distance, I've written it with S and time is t. Basically, t is equal to S divided by v. But they are going towards each other. So in this case, they will meet each other, and S here is 500 kilometers, the distance. The meeting point will be S divided by V1 plus V2, and this is 500 divided by 45 plus 55. So this is after 5 hours, because these are kilometers and these are kilometers per hour, okay? So they will meet each other after 5 hours, meaning that this guy has traveled 5 hours, this guy has traveled 5 hours. And where is the meeting point? It's here somewhere. So let's call this S1, and this one is S2. So S1 will be V1 multiplied by T, which is 45 kilometers per hour, multiplied by 5 hours, and I think it was 225 kilometers. S2 will be V2 multiplied by T. Okay, are you getting it? Is it straightforward? Just let's check that the programming is working, that the program we have written is okay. So V2 multiplied by T, which is 55 kilometers per hour, multiplied by 5 hours, and this is 275 kilometers. So the point they will meet is this one. 225 kilometers from A, 275 kilometers from from Istanbul, and we showed it with our code. Now let's see how the code is working. Let's go step by step. I'm going to play the compiler a couple of times, and afterwards I'm just going to generally explain what the code is doing, okay? It's also good to write comments. Maybe you can do it yourself. Okay, so, in the beginning, I have string city1, city2. So, this is our output. The compiler reserves a memory for city1, which is of type string, and another one for city2, which is also string. Then we reserve float memories for variables called distance. Then we have another variable called meeting time. I'm going to write it as end time. Another variable which is called what? Distance 1. Basically this is S1. And distance 2. Distance 1. And the other one is distance 2. I also declare two variables of integer type. They are velocity 1, I'm going to write it as v1, and velocity 2. Let's go to. Now, this will be printed. Let's enter the names of the locations. In your prompt, you will see this stuff. Please enter the names of the locations. So, please, this is going to be printed. Enter the names of the name. And I'm reading both of them, city 1, city 2. So I'm giving Ankara and Istanbul. Enter, Istanbul, enter again. And they are stored here, respectively. This is Ankara stored, this is Istanbul stored as I have given them. Enter the distance between two locations in kilometers. So enter the distance in kilometers, and the distance was 500 kilometers. When I say 500, it's stored here. But what's the type of distance? What type distance is? Come on. Is it character, a string? Is that a char, a float? It's float. Float meaning it must have a floating point. Okay. Even if I say 500 as an input, it will be stored here as 500.0 because it's a float, okay? So we will have 500 there. And the velocities for the vehicles. So repeat it. Enter velocities. And I'm entering, let's say, 45, 55. So they will be stored, velocity 1, velocity 2 here, 45 will be stored here, and 55. If I say that V1 is 45.3, since it's an integer number, only the whole part of the number will be taken, the integer part. Everything that is after the floating point, the decimal part is going to be discarded. It's going to be flushed. Even if it's 45.9, I'll take only 45. This is how it works. Okay? So I have 45 here, 55 here, not 45.0. See, it's an integer number. Meeting time is equal to distance divided by velocity 1 plus velocity 2. As you can see it. Meeting time is distance divided by V1 plus V2. Okay? And I have a meeting time of what? Can you tell me? So I have 500. The distance is 500.0. 45 divided by 55. What will be the output? So 45 plus 55 is 100. 500 divided by 100 is 5. So it's 5 here. Is it 5? No, it's 5.0. Because meeting time that we have just calculated is of type float. Okay? So it's 5.0. Pay attention to this stuff. And I'm calculating distance 1, which is velocity 1 plus multiplied by meeting time. This is 1. Distance 1 is velocity, speed, multiplied by the time. That's this much. Distance 2 is velocity 2 multiplied by the time. So I have here 225 and 275. Correct? No. It's 0.0. 0.0 also. Because those are float numbers. Okay? You should get used with this stuff. Finally, I'm printing they will meet in. Should I write this stuff? No. I mean, they will meet in meeting time 5 hours, because meeting time is 5. Okay. The meeting point will be distance 1, 225 kilometers from point 1, from Ankara, and it will be distance to 275 kilometers from city 2, and city 2 is Istanbul. Okay? City 1 is Ankara. Those are the values that we gave it to him. Now this is it. The program terminates. Let's say it again. Now tell me 2 cities. Izmir, let's say. And Trabzon. The distance, let's say that it's 1,000 kilometers. I'm making those numbers. So we have done this part of the code. Now please enter the names of the locations. I just entered them. We have city 1 and city 2. Enter the distance between 2 locations. Enter the distance between 2 locations. I'm doing it right now. It's 1,000. When I press enter, I've already the value of distance. Velocities of the vehicles, let's say the one is going with 100 kilometers per hour. Velocities are integers. The other one is going with 120 kilometers per hour. So I've read both of them, velocity 1, velocity 2. Then I'm calculating the meeting time, the distance 1, the distance 2. I'm printing they will meet in 4.545 hours. The meeting point will be this kilometers away from Izmir, this much kilometers away from Trabzon. And this is it. Any questions about this piece of code? Did you understand it? Or did not? If you did not understand it, please tell me, explain the part that was problematic for you, okay? So who did not understand it? It's not recording too bad. So you can raise your hand. Should I go through it again? Because I'm not going to do this stuff like a week or 2 from now. Okay? Well, we are done with the vehicle stuff then. I can give you like 5 minutes to play with the code, or you can ask me, I can come. We are not going to be recorded. You're not going to be famous, unfortunately. So you can raise your hand, I can come to you and help you something. You have at most 5 minutes to play with the code. For instance, velocity 2, you can say, you can declare another variable which is called sum of velocities, which is equal to velocity 1 plus velocity 2. And instead of this one, you can divide it with sum of velocities. Okay? So play with the code. Comment here. Basically, we are saying to the compiler, reserve a memory for velocity 1 and velocity 2. But the values for velocity 1 and velocity 2 are not given, are not known. We have just reserved a memory for those two. We know those values here. So velocity 1 is red, velocity 2 is red. So if you want to do something like, this was a mistake that one of your friends also asked me during the last week. So let's say it's like this. Let's declare another variable called sum. And if you say here that sum is equal to velocity 1 plus velocity 2, you have just to type a few characters, couple of characters, and suggestions will show them what is available for whatever you are typed. So velocity 1 plus velocity 2. If you do it in this particular place, it will be a mistake. Because something like, it's an error, because velocity 1 and velocity 2 are not initialized. Initialized meaning that you have not given initial value to those. They don't have values. They're just declared. There is a place of memory reserved for them. You can assume that it's empty, nothing there. You can assume there is something. What is there? We will see it later on, okay? So you can only use them after you give them an input, or you can say that velocity 1, you can do something like this also. You can say here that, well, velocity 1 is equal to 50, and velocity 2 is equal to 120, for instance. This works, because now the values are not empty. They are 50 and 120. Of course, then it makes no sense to read them, because you have given them. But this is a more general rule, because you cannot force all the cars to go with speed of 50 kilometers per hour, okay? It can be 0 kilometers per hour. If there are no questions, we have 3 more codes to cover. Let me check which one is the next. Just before the break, by the way, if you cannot see this window, this is called the Solution Explorer. You can go to View. Where is View? Solution Explorer, and it will be shown, okay? If it's boring, you can make it static like this, or you can press this button here so it hides when you don't need it, okay? So this is the Solution Explorer. Remove vehicles, .cpp. I don't know, let's say the changes also, it's not a problem. Now add a new item, an existing item basically. Add existing item, let it be in integer divisions. Add it. Don't forget the cin point ignore and cin point get out. You can use also system calls, but for homeworks you must use those two, as I told you. Now sometimes we have this kind of problems. Let me run the code, compile it. Just a moment. Okay. I want to display those comments in a line. So if we delete this empty space here, we can display them in a single line. This is much better. Much readable, I would say. Okay, let's check what are we doing. The result of expression 1 divided by 2. And what's 1? 1 is an integer, okay? 2 is also integer. When I divide 1 and 2, it's 0. In maths, this doesn't make any sense, because when I divide 1 and 2, it's 0.5, okay? But since both 1 and 2 are integer numbers, the result is going also to be an integer. And everything that comes after the floating point, the decimal part, is flushed. Okay? That's why 1 divided by 2 is 0. But if I write something like this, 1.0, and 1.0 is what kind of data, what kind of type? It's float, okay? Float, or double decimal basically, in mathematical language. So when I divide two decimal numbers, I get a decimal one. Let's say something else with negative expressions. Minus 1 divided by 2. Integer divided by integer, the result is integer, it's 0. It should be minus 0.5 in maths. But this is programming, this is not math, so it's 0. But when we divide two integers, positive or negative, same, we have minus 0.5 as a result, okay? Then, expression 9 divided by 4, this is 2. But the results of expression 9.0 divided by 4.0 is 2.2. And also, there is something that you should note. When one of the operands meaning I'm dividing 3, this is one operand, with 2.0, this is another operand. If one of the operands is float and the other is integer, automatically the integer operand is converted to float. Meaning that also you see that although you see it as 3 here, it's automatically converted from the compiler to 3.0. And I'm dividing 3.0 to 3.0, which is 1.5. No matter which one, the first or the second, when I'm dividing or multiplying or whatever, a float number with an integer number, the result is always float or double. I think that's it. Does it make sense? Oh. Questions? Remember this one. No questions. Okay. Before going, yeah.
What if there are more integers than floats?
If there is only one float, everything is going to be float. But, okay. Sometimes you might have something like this. A is equal to 3.0 divided by or 2.0 divided by 1.0 divided by 2.0, and this will be 0. I'm writing 0 like this in order to distinguish it from O. Okay? Why it's the case? Yeah, this is float. This is also float. The result is going to be 0.5. But this 0.5 should be stored here in A. And A is of integer type, meaning that A doesn't have a float, doesn't have space for digits after the floating point, okay? It's only for whole numbers. That's why this 5 is going to be discarded, and 0 is going to be put here, okay? Remember this stuff because you might have it in your exam, or quizzes, or tests, or midterms, whatever. 1 more minute. I'm going to erase this stuff. We saw the modulo operation. We explained it briefly. So 7 divided by 2 is how much? I'm talking about programming now, it's not maths. How much is that? Come on. I'm dividing 7? It's 3. Okay. Why? Because when I divide 7 with 2, it's 3. 3 multiplied by 2 is 6, minus 6. We have 1. So the quotient is 3. And the remainder is 1. And you remember the modulo operator? The percent? 1 is written as percent. So if I write 7 modulo 2, what will be the result? It gives the remainder. So it's 1. Okay? This is, we put it here, we put it here. Okay? This is the division, the whole part of the result, the number, the integer part, and the remainder is put here. For division, you use this stuff, you get only the whole number. For the remainder, you use the modulo. Okay? Is this clear? Because you're going to use modulo a lot. Now let's have a break before seeing 2 more pieces of code. Okay? We'll be back in 10 minutes.